Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, Founder Stories, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most visionary founders. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these trailblazers. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, we are joined by the absolute titan who turned a small, traditional Japanese playing card company into a global entertainment empire. Please welcome the former longtime president of Nintendo, Mr. Hiroshi Yamauchi. Hiroshi, it is an absolute honor to have you on the podcast today. How are you feeling about joining us for another interview?
Calvin, thank you for this wonderful greeting.
We are thrilled to have your energy here, Hiroshi. Let's dive right into these narrative questions. When you first conceived of your business, the world was a very different place. What was the exact moment you realized society was moving in a direction only you could see? And how did you convince the early skeptics?
The vision ahead of its time. For generations, my family made traditional Hanafuda playing cards in Kyoto. But when I took over in 1949, I knew we could not rely on the old ways forever. The exact moment of realization came when I visited the United States Playing Card Company. They were the biggest card manufacturer in the entire world, yet when I arrived, I saw their operations were housed in quite a small, modest office. It hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that even if we became the absolute best playing card company in the world, the market had a strict ceiling. Society was moving toward modern, mass entertainment. To convince the skeptics inside my own walls, I had to take bold action. I secured a historic partnership with Walt Disney in 1959 to put their beloved characters onto our plastic-backed cards, selling over 600,000 packs in a single year. It showed everyone that entertainment, not just cardboard, was our true future.
That is incredible. Talk about seeing the ceiling and completely shattering it. But leaving behind safety to build something entirely unproven is a massive gamble. What did your life look like the day you decided to go all in? And what was the core belief that gave you the courage to take that first step?
My life was in complete chaos the day I decided to go all in. I was just a 21-year-old law student at Waseda University when my grandfather suffered a stroke. Suddenly, I was pulled from my studies and asked to take over Nintendo. I had no business experience, and the factory workers did not take me seriously at all because of my youth. My core belief was that if I was going to carry the burden of this company, I must have absolute authority to reshape it. I agreed to take the job on one strict condition, that I would be the only family member working at the company. I had to let my own cousin go. When the factory workers went on strike shortly after to test my resolve, I stood firm and dismissed the organizers. It required immense courage, but I believed entirely that a captain must rule his ship with total commitment if it is to survive the open seas.
Wow, talk about a trial by fire right at the starting line. In the absolute beginning of your transformation of the company, when you had no data, no capital, and no blueprint, what was the one truth you held onto that everyone else around you dismissed?
The one truth I held on to was that Nintendo was fundamentally in the business of entertainment, not technology or manufacturing. Everyone else around me thought we were just a manufacturing plant that stamped out physical goods. When I wanted to move away from playing cards, people thought it was reckless. But I knew that human beings possess an innate desire to be entertained, to play, and to experience joy. It did not matter whether the medium was paper, plastic, or eventually silicon chips. If we could tap into the human imagination, the product would succeed. I trusted my own intuition completely to judge what was fun, even when there was no market data to support it.
And that instinct paid off in ways history will never forget. But long before your company became a household name, you hit a wall where everything nearly collapsed. Take us back to that first major failure. What went wrong, and how did you find the willpower to restart?
Oh, the road to success is paved with heavy stumbles. In the 1960s, desperately wanting to diversify away from playing cards, I tried so many different businesses. We started a taxi company called Daya, we tried selling instant rice, and we tried electronic toys. The instant rice tasted terrible, and the taxi business was plagued with labor issues. We spent so much capital on these experiments that we came right to the brink of bankruptcy. It was a terrifying time. But my willpower to restart came from a simple moment of observation. I was walking through a Hanafuda factory and noticed a maintenance engineer named Gunpei Yokoi playing with an extendable toy claw he had built for his own amusement. I saw the magic in it instantly. I ordered him to develop it for the Christmas rush, and it became the Ultra Hand, selling hundreds of thousands of units. That single success saved us and showed me our true path forward was the toy and game market.
It is amazing how a simple toy claw turned the tides. Innovation often looks like madness to contemporaries, though. Was there a specific product, philosophy, or strategy you were utterly convinced would work, but the public initially rejected or ridiculed? How did you respond?
When we decided to launch our home video game system, the Famicom, which became the Nintendo Entertainment System, many retailers and critics in the West were incredibly skeptical. The video game market in America had completely crashed in the early 1980s, and people told us that video games were a dead fad. They ridiculed the idea of trying to sell a new console, but my philosophy was unyielding. Hardware is merely a box that people are forced to buy in order to play the software. If the games are brilliant, the public will buy the box. We responded by focusing entirely on high-quality, creative software. I set up competing research and development teams within the company to push our designers, including the brilliant young Shigeru Miyamoto, to create games like Donkey Kong and Super Mario. We proved the skeptics wrong by leading with pure creativity.
The hardware is just a box for the software. That philosophy changed the entire industry. But behind the legendary name was a human being facing immense pressure, whether from financial panics, internal betrayal, or personal doubt. How did you shoulder that burden without letting the vision splinter?
It was a very heavy burden, Calvin. I led Nintendo for over 50 years, and the pressure to keep thousands of workers employed while constantly innovating was immense. I shouldered that weight by maintaining an iron discipline and a certain distance. I became known for a very strict, imperial style of leadership, making the final decisions myself on every single product. I did not let personal doubts or external noise cloud my judgment. If I thought a game was good, we made it. If I did not like it, it was canceled. By staying completely true to my own standards and refusing to bow to outside pressure, I kept the company's vision perfectly focused without fracturing.
That focus is exactly why Nintendo became what it is. Who were the very first people, beyond your immediate family, to buy into what you were doing? How did you convince early workers or customers to trust an entirely unproven concept?
The first true believers were the brilliant young engineers and designers I recruited, like Gunpei Yokoi. I did not convince them with grand corporate speeches or financial metrics. Instead, I gave them a creative freedom they could not find anywhere else in traditional Japanese corporate culture. I established the games and setup department and told them, go make something new and exciting. When creative people see that their leader genuinely trusts their wild ideas and will fund their experiments, they will work with a fierce loyalty and passion. For our customers, we won their trust simply by delivering consistent fun that worked perfectly every single time.
Giving creators the space to create. What a powerful concept. Can you take us to the exact moment where you felt the momentum shift? What was the specific milestone, contract, or breakthrough where you realized we aren't just going to survive, we are going to change everything?
The absolute tipping point was the massive success of Donkey Kong in the arcades, followed closely by the launch of the Famicom in Japan. When we saw the lines forming down the streets of Tokyo with children and parents desperate to get their hands on our family computer, I knew the momentum had completely shifted. We weren't just a toy company trying to stay afloat anymore. We had created a cultural phenomenon. Seeing households across the nation gathered around the television set to play our games, I realized that we were about to change the global entertainment landscape forever.
You didn't just build a company, you built a distinct culture and philosophy that outlasted you. In the early days, when it was just a handful of people in a room, how did you instill that standard of excellence or service?
I instilled it through a relentless emphasis on originality and quality. I constantly told my teams that if we simply copied what other companies were doing, we would fail. We had to be unique. I established a culture of intense internal competition. By creating separate R&D teams that competed against one another to pitch the best ideas, it forced everyone to elevate their work to a standard of absolute excellence. They knew that I was a tough judge to please, so they brought nothing but their very best to the table.
History books often flatten a person's life into a neat, polished narrative. What is the biggest misconception people have about your journey, your character, or how your company was actually built?
The greatest misconception is that people often think I must have been an avid game player myself, or some kind of whimsical toy maker like a Willy Wonka character. In truth, I never played video games at all. I was, from first to last, a traditional businessman. My success did not come from playing the games, but from understanding the business of entertainment and recognizing the spark of genius in others. People also think our rise to the top was a perfectly planned, master blueprint from day one, but much of it came from happy accidents, hard lessons from failed businesses, and adapting quickly when we found something that worked.
That is a fascinating contrast. Building an empire always requires a steep personal cost, though. Looking back at the entirety of your life, what was the hardest sacrifice you had to make for the sake of your vision? And was it ultimately worth it?
The hardest sacrifice was the sheer weight of isolation and the loss of a normal, quiet life. From the age of 21 until I stepped down in 2002, my entire existence was consumed by the responsibility of Nintendo. I had to maintain a very stern, uncompromising public persona, which meant I lived a rather reclusive life and bore the emotional weight of leadership mostly alone. But looking back at the journey, seeing the smiles on the faces of millions of families around the world, and knowing that we built an institution of joy from a humble card shop, yes, it was ultimately worth every single sacrifice.
If you could send a single sentence back through time to yourself on the very first day you started this venture, knowing every trial, triumph, and heartbreak that awaited you, what would you say?
I would say to my younger self, trust your intuition completely, stand firm against the storms of doubt, and know that your true purpose is to bring joy to the world.
That is a beautiful sentiment to hold on to. Hiroshi, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
I just want to say to all the listeners out there who are trying to build their own visions, do not be afraid of failure, because our greatest triumphs at Nintendo came directly after our darkest setbacks. Thank you so much, Calvin, for having me on your wonderful show today. It has been a truly joyful experience to look back on it all with you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Yamauchi. Hearing how a 21-year-old stepped into a traditional playing card company and, through sheer determination and an understanding of human joy, built a global gaming empire is incredibly inspiring. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast, Founder Stories. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.